Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome everyone to the MBA Thought Leadership Series, where tonight we'll be talking about leading with artificial intelligence. Before we start, allow me to guide us in a non-religious karakia. Whakatau mai te wairua, whakawātea mai te hininaru, whakarite mai te tinana, kia iai ngā mahi ai. So, a few really fun announcements that I get to do before we start in our really exciting panel tonight is just tell you about all the cool things that's happening at the university at the moment. First and foremost, we're celebrating our 150th year, and that means that there are so many activities, fundraisers, golf days, weekends on campus that's happening. But one of the first few that's coming up just around the corner would be the Raise the Bar event on the 2nd of May. That event is, it happens around the world. There's been a few in North America, there's been one in Auckland, and essentially it's where 20 academics get chosen from a university to go to 10 bars, and they have 10 minutes to talk about key research that's relevant to the city. So Akant, Veer and I are talking as well, and I'm continuing on this trend, this ChatGPT, and Akant's talking about what we can learn from trolling behavior. So that's a fun thing that's happening. And then Jared Quinn, our director of UCE, UC Centre for Entrepreneurship, they have their Food, Fibre and Aggregate challenge running. This is for... I've realized the other day that I don't know the innovation lingo. Is it pre-startup, pre-seed? What's the name? Jared's here. Jared? Yes.
A great idea for research that could be commercialised in the near term.
That's right. A great idea that could be commercialised. And Jared told me that the prize money has up to $30,000 for the winning team. So you don't have to be a University of Canterbury student to enroll in this. This is open for the whole city, and it's there to boost innovation within our wonderful city. We also have our wonderful director and coordinator of executive education here, and they have a few really cool things, cool courses happening in the short term. This is by no stretch of the imagination, a complete list of all the courses running, but it gives you an idea of the really forward-thinking short courses happening at executive education at the university. And then, of course, we have just launched a really exciting program in the MBA program called...
When I started my MBA...
Hang on. Called our commitment to continuous learning program, where if you're an MBA, a UC MBA alumni, you can come back and do one free course per year. And that, of course, means that we get you back into the fold, and we help invest in your lifelong journey. So as you know, there's no free lunch. And I'll grab a minute of your time for just 2 videos just telling you all about our wonderful MBA program.
When I started my MBA, I was principal of a primary school. As a result of the MBA, I'm now a business partner for a business consultancy, and I would never have been at this place if it wasn't for Canterbury's MBA program. It's been life-changing. I've benefited hugely, not only from the lecturers and the academic staff, but from my classmates, and have made lifelong friends and business partners as a result of that study.
What led me to the MBA was wanting to enhance my capability around strategy and looking for courses that would allow me to gain the personal and professional level up that I was looking for, and the MBA helped me do that. The MBA's done so much in terms of just helping me understand what it is I'm bringing to the table. If you want options, if you want opportunities, then the MBA will enable that to happen.
Thank you for that slow clap. So, for those of you who want to find out a bit more about the MBA, please join us in our information evening on the 5th of April. But of course, our audience tonight is mostly the business leaders in our community already. And we would also like to invite you to join us and partner with us on the MBA program through various activities. Whether you need an MBA student to do a consulting project for you, so at the end of our MBA, students need to do a 450-hour consulting project. And I know that you all have business problems and opportunities that you would like to investigate. Come and join us. Whether you want to get involved in some of the leading edge courses that we offer as a client. So we have a dual teaching mode where we have academics and practitioners teaching together on all our courses, and some of our practitioners and industry leads are sitting in the audience tonight. But we also have clients that we get the cohort to solve problems for. So there are various ways. We have a Friends of the MBA program, and of course, really clever employers pay their staff members to do an MBA because you know that you have them for at least 3 to 5 years. Because most of our students are doing their work part-time, right? So thank you. That was your payment for the panel tonight. You've sat through it so well. And we can, without further ado, move on to our panel discussion, who I know everybody is really, really excited to meet. Maybe just a minute to introduce myself, and I realize, and Paul would know this, our executive dean, every thought leadership event we've had, I've forgotten to actually introduce myself. So this is me finally remembering to do that in good time. So I am Associate Professor Elsa Marie Buerta. I'm at the business school at the university, but I'm also the MBA director. So my own teaching specialization is within digital transformation and technology transitions, and looking at how organizations can adopt new technologies and how new technologies impact business models. And in particular, I've published in artificial intelligence within the retail space and how retail value chains are transformed when artificial intelligence is used appropriately. Having said that, I know by looking at our audience and recognizing some of the key members in the audience that I am by no stretch of the imagination the AI expert in the room, not only, and also not even our panel. There are a bunch of really, really clever tech people in here. And we really look forward to, at the end of the discussion, and we decided as a panel that we're going to keep our discussion as concise as possible so that we can have a good, thorough Q&A session at the end. So really looking forward to everybody asking those questions and engaging with our panels. This has been a really busy week for artificial intelligence, and we're so glad we met on Monday to discuss tonight's event. And I'm so glad we didn't meet before, because we would have had to redevelop our whole talk this week. Everything is changing with such a dramatic pace of change, and every day something new comes out. And as an illustration, over this weekend, Bill Gates did a Bill Notes on why artificial intelligence is really revolutionary. This quote of his: "The development of AI is as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone, and it will change the way people work, learn, travel, get healthcare, and communicate with each other. Entire industries will reorient around it, and businesses will distinguish themselves by how well they use it." Really interesting when you read his piece, where he says that there's been 2 revolutionary moments in his life, and he was one of the first people involved in technology. And he says that the first was with the graphical user interface. And when he saw that, he knew that the internet would reach millions of people because it was usable. And he says that the second truly revolutionary moment is with large language models like ChatGPT, that actually makes artificial intelligence, which has been around for decades, available to you and me to use it, just because we can use it with natural language. So that was this weekend. And then on Monday and Tuesday, all the news outlets picked up on the Goldman Sachs report that essentially said that 300 million full-time jobs will be replaced by AI. It could replace a quarter of work tasks in the US and Europe, but may also mean new jobs and a productivity boom. And they said that it could eventually increase total annual value of goods and services produced globally by 7%. Of course, most people jumped on the 300 million jobs angle. And then this morning, well, it was yesterday, I suppose, in the States, we got this news this morning that Elon Musk and a bunch of his friends wrote a moratorium against AI, asking for us to essentially halt any development until we can figure out some important questions. So really an unenviable task of our panel to be on top of the very, very, very broad spectrum that is AI, and B, also even just to be on top of this week's news. So we'll forgive them if they don't know all the answers, but we do know that they are experts in their fields and they have used this technology to great effect within their companies. So we're really, really thankful to hear from them. And what we'll do now is I will introduce each of them, and I've asked them to give us, after their individual introduction, asked them to give us just 5 minutes of, I suppose, a declaration, summary, an introduction for us to build off for the rest of our panel discussion tonight. And we'll start with Kari. So Kari Jones is the General Manager for Analytics and Insights with Woolworths Group, with both local and group accountabilities. Locally, Kari leads the analytics function for Woolworths New Zealand and reports into the Chief of Strategy and Transformation. Kari leads a full stack data, analytics and insights capability that is responsible for driving analytics, transformation and enablement end to end. And at the group level, Kari is a member of the advanced analytics leadership team called Woolworths IQ, reporting into the Chief Analytics Officer for Woolworths Group. At the group level, she is responsible for leading a culture transformation around data through the Woolworths Data Academy, as well as sustainability analytics. Kari is an experienced executive leader committed to improving the performance of New Zealand organizations through the increased adoption and application of emerging technology, advanced analytics, and artificial intelligence. Over the past 11 years, Kari has worked with a range of iconic organizations to increase their digital and analytics maturity, executing strategies that improve customer centricity, operational effectiveness, and achieve significant business results. Thank you, Kari. Yes. Please.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. So I just want to state that I'm not a data scientist, but a career in technology was pretty much a given for me. So from my dad teaching me how to program on the BBC, which is a very old computer, and enrolling me in computer club, and my mother force-feeding me Isaac Asimov on cassette tape and Star Trek on VHS. So pretty much, I knew I was going to sort of land in technology at some point in time. It's been a long time. I think I've been saying, when are the robots coming? And I think I've been constantly disappointed. With everything that I've sort of grown up with, I've been constantly disappointed, and I think we're sort of finally getting there to something that is going to hopefully take the toil and the drudgery away from much of the work that we do. At least that's the way that I'm choosing to see it. Now, look, yeah, I've been in this field for a very long time. I was in an engineering role before I came to New Zealand, and then came to New Zealand and took on leadership and strategic and management roles. I've had some really awesome, really interesting opportunities to get back overseas, to go into Silicon Valley, to see what Amazon is up to, see what Facebook is up to, see what Salesforce is up to. Even had the opportunity to get over and see Google's holodeck. I was like, a holodeck. Finally, we've got a holodeck. I pitched that to an organization, and I think they thought, well, I was absolutely crazy. I think if there's one piece of advice that I would give to leaders is listen to some of your crazy people just a little bit more. Look, it's an exciting time, and it's a scary time. Any, I suppose, opinions that I'll express tonight are mine. I'm part of a big organisation that's gone all in on AI. Our group CEO, Brad Benducci, a very forward-thinking guy, has said basically that our biggest challenges at Woolworths Group, 200,000 people across New Zealand and Australia, our biggest challenges are going to be solved through different flavours of AI or machine learning. And he said that a good few years ago, and he's backed that up. Okay, huge piece of work with BCG to set up a use case roadmap with $1 billion of EBIT as a target that we are going to go after and are tracking against through deploying different advanced analytics solutions right across our organisation. I look after 100 analytics professionals right across from everything from data governance through to advanced analytics. That's just New Zealand, okay? And so then we have another 500 in Australia, okay? And so when we say we're going all in on AI, we are, and we backed it up. Through purchases of 75% share in Quantium, and really starting to deliver and putting this work into production. Everything from pick path optimization to personalization of customer experience. But it's a scary time, right? And I can't, Gareth and I had a quick chat. How are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling about this time? Unsure, and I'm sure a lot of people are feeling like this. So I was at an analytics hackathon that we were leading a couple of weeks ago, and I said that I was climate change and had climate change anxiety since I was about 15 years old. How do you think I feel now? With the AI, I've been excited for many years, and now it's here. It's actually a little bit scary and a little bit daunting, but that's okay. People like change. Okay, we just don't like big, fast change. But this has been coming up on us for a long, long time. And a lot of the crazy people, the futurists in the organisation, have been talking to CEOs, have been talking to exec teams about getting in and going all in on AI for a long time. And I suppose one of my frustrations has always been, when I've come to New Zealand, is why do we feel so behind? Why haven't we taken bigger, bolder steps in this space and been more innovative and gone for it? And why has it taken so much convincing at an executive level? And so I suppose the other question I was sort of thinking, getting ready for tonight, I said, well, how am I feeling? And I thought, well, actually, to be a bit provocative, because I am a bit like that, I think that's part of my role, I feel disappointed, actually. And I explain why I feel disappointed. For all of the stuff that AI could do, for all of the problems that we could solve, okay? We've decided to create images out of other images. You know? And I think for me, and you know, we've decided to, you know, let a machine create websites just like that off a brief. Like, goodness, haven't we got some bigger problems to put, you know, some of the world's cleverest people focusing, pointing at the right things? And maybe, I mean, Gareth's a little bit more maybe hopeful that, that hopefully that will come. But geez, you know, we've got climate change, food security, lifting people out of poverty. We've got bigger fish to fry than, you know, how to create text from other text, or how to create images out of other images. A problem that wasn't even there to solve in the first place. But we should have some humour, right? We should have some humour tonight, because I think we need to. It can be a bit doom and gloom, but let's have some humour about it. We get to choose the trajectory. Okay, we get to choose the trajectory of which we want to travel. And I think we have to keep that in mind. We've chosen, in many of the uses of our technology, and we talked a little bit about that from the social media perspective, we've chosen to allow it to go down a particular path that maybe we're not particularly happy with. We've got a choice around the trajectory. We've got a choice around how people and technology want to live together in the future, and what values we actually want to protect. And we've got to be very clear about those things. Otherwise, you know, it could be a very different, more of the dystopian future rather than the one that is one where humans really get to flourish and continue to grow and to be the humans and to be the people that we want to be in the future. So hopefully that's a reasonable opening statement.
Thanks, Kari. In our previous thought leadership panel, you guys said we want more provocative people. See, we deliver on the MBA. Thanks, Kari. Let me take our faces off here. Yes, much better. Ben Reid. So Ben Reid is one of Aotearoa's deep thinkers about exponential technology change. He brings nearly 3 decades tech sector experience in diverse roles, including software development, enterprise architecture, AI policy, technology governance, and business consulting. From 2017 to 2019, he was the founding executive director of the AI Forum New Zealand, an AI policy think tank and advocacy body for New Zealand. He currently operates as an independent advisor with businesses in Aotearoa and across Asia Pacific, focusing on technology, strategy, foresight, and innovation. He also works with many exporters on digital and systems strategy as part of the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise Beachheads Advisory Network. Ben describes himself as constantly curious about the future. He researches and writes the weekly Mimia newsletter on Substack, now read by thousands, including myself, that really just covers the latest global emerging tech trends and accelerating change. And finally, he also has a forthcoming book, Fast Forward Aotearoa, out mid-2023, which explores how accelerating technologies are defining the future of New Zealand and what can be done about it. Your 5 minutes starts now.
Kia ora, Elsa-Marie. Kia ora, everybody, and it's just great to be here. I absolutely love this building. This is one of the first buildings to go up after the quakes, and it's just got a really sort of special atmosphere, and the acoustics are fantastic as well. Look, so thanks very much for inviting me along today. As Elsa-Marie said, I sort of spend my weeks, a lot of it, researching and writing my newsletter, the Mimia newsletter. And what I would say is I doom scroll through Twitter all day so that you don't have to. The quote from Bill Gates earlier, I disagree with that. There are moments in technology, significant moments. What we are witnessing is basically just this ambient acceleration of compounding technological change, and arguably this has been going on since the Big Bang in terms of the increase in complexity, information complexity in the universe. But previously this would happen over eons, and then centuries, and then decades and years, and now it's going so fast it's actually perceptible in our day-to-day lives. And so the technology generations, if you think about it, it's like about 15 years now, just over 15 years since the iPhone was first released, and everyone has a smartphone in their pocket around the world now. And that generation, that 15 years, we're probably going to see the same order of magnitude of technological change in the next year. And then beyond that, it'll be 6 months, and then 3 months. And so I've been anticipating this like Kari, because I've read a lot of science fiction, and but it's weird living in it, and because it feels like it has suddenly snuck up. And so ChatGPT, we've those of us who've been in the space have been aware of generative AI, for years, and it was all, it was a toy that would be able to sort of generate sort of faces that sort of looked a bit weird for a while, and now you've got someone publishing very realistic pictures of Donald Trump getting arrested, out on the mainstream, hitting the mainstream media, and try and explain that to your gran, right? It's the world is not prepared, and I don't think, from a cognitive defences point of view, the flood of AI-generated content that we're going to see coming forward, I don't think that we're prepared and quite understand how significant that will be to basically pull apart any kind of collective narrative that we have as a nation and as an international community. Anyway, I'm here to talk about business, so on sort of possibly more tangible topics. So my view on this is that there is this ambient acceleration, that technology begets technology. It accelerates the development of innovation, and as part of that, change is inevitable, and so there are calls here for a moratorium on innovation today, with that open letter. I'm not sure how that will play, but ultimately it's not going to affect AI labs in China, for example. It's not going to affect AI labs in other places around the world. So the ability to stop this is in my view not there, and so it's more in the same way as we've been moving the conversation around climate change to reversing climate change, and moving the conversation from there to adaptation. I see, in some ways we've got to adapt to AI, and we've actually got to do it. Climate change we've been talking about for decades, and we've been thinking, we've got decades to adapt. We've got less than decades. We've got years or months to adapt to these changes as these large language models, large generative AI tools just become ubiquitous around us. So short term, from a business point of view, I think this is going to have really significantly positive effects, and for New Zealand and around the world. I was reading a report today from the Aotearoa AI Researchers Network, which had some really, it was advice for policymakers on generative AI, and their observation is that we're actually going to see a short-term productivity bonanza, and in service industries, and so when I'm using these tools personally, and I'm sort of integrating more and more into my daily workflows, I'm just constantly amazed by the amount that I'm able to do in just a shorter period of time. And so a lot of this is anecdotal, and one of the key things I'd say here, 5 minutes, so branching off into there, is that we've seen the demos, right? And when you see a tech demo, it blows your mind. It's like, oh my God, that's amazing. But then it takes about months usually for this technology to get out, for people to use it and actually find the limitations. And so I think right now we're all getting our heads blown by by ChatGPT, by the rolling out into being, by Midjourney, by DALL-E. There are limitations to these tools, and so on the one hand I'm an accelerationist, on the other hand I maintain a healthy skepticism that we're getting this barrage of daily press releases as OpenAI basically is just rolling out this strategy that they've had in the back pocket for the last 5 years. So from a New Zealand point of view, we have an economy where we have historically low productivity per hour worked, we have labour shortages, we have well-documented skills shortages, and we export generally low-value products, primary products rather than complexity. And our economy, if you look at the Observatory of Economic Complexity, our economy is significantly less complex than other OECD nations that we might want to compare ourselves against. And so this is a real opportunity to really improve those productivity problems. And in particular, I really don't want to, I don't expect, I'm sure I will, anyone to be complaining about skill shortages again in the next few months, right? It's like, you're saying you've got 600 folks on your team, you now have 1,200, yeah? Some of the research is literally...
me 300.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a topic we can go into later, is just the augmentation of, how this technology is going to be, not just from an individual point of view, but how you can just automate entire workflows and take out that drudgery and the jobs that are quite repetitive.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my 2 cents.
Thank
My 5
you,
minutes.
Ben. Awesome. Gareth, last but definitely not least, Gareth is the head of digital and improvement at Westland Milk Products, a company that's had some really, really good news the past week released. So a combination of head of improvement and the traditional CIO role, with 20 years experience across industries from family-run businesses, sports associations, through to large multinationals, and roles from CEO, general manager, through to global supply chain manager and operations manager. Gareth leads not only the tech team at Westland, but also business process improvement and the automation engineering team. Not a truly traditional IT leader, Gareth is a technologist at heart, but with a certified continuous improvement Kaizen background. Having worked in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina and Uruguay, he has broad cross-border experience and has applied tried and true business improvement methods mixed with process automation, RPA and OT plant automation. Over to you.
Thank you very much. What a hell of a way to start, guys. I'm not sure I've got any meaning to be up here, but I just wanted to start by saying thank you for inviting me along to talk. I'm not sure I'm an expert in anything in this space, but I've got opinions. Tell you what they are. I think Ben just took a shot at the primary industry, but I won't hold that against him. So obviously I work for a dairy company. We have had some success recently, but over the last, I guess, 10 years I've watched technology in my world of business improvement become pretty much a key imperative in everything we do. When I started my career, process improvement was less paper shuffling. It wasn't getting rid of it, and now it is, right? So it's been an interesting change, and I've got some cheat sheet notes here, so if I look down, that's one. Over the last few years, I've seen my team embrace a lot of what we would call sort of AI before ChatGPT came along, RPA, process automation technologies, what else have we got on the list? Chatbots, machine learning, but nothing quite like what's happening at the moment. And to me, like these guys have just said, it's kind of watching the chicken emerge from the egg. It's been in there as an embryo bubbling away, and the industry is small, and there might be 50 to 100 people that have been sort of right in the fulcrum of it, and now we're starting to see it emerge, and that's, like you say, interesting, unsettling, nervous. I'm assuming a lot of you probably have watched the Lex Fridman and the CEO of OpenAI with Sam, yep. And they had an interesting observation of, it's always interesting to see what's the first thing you ask ChatGPT. So I thought to myself, well, I asked it if it could tell me how to build a T1000, so I'm not sure what that says about me. It said it couldn't. But if it could, it gave me some instructions. They weren't great. As a technologist, I mean, I grew up in a similar time, Commodore 64s, Amiga 500s. I'm a real geek. I've got VR headsets galore at home, a robot vacuums, which I think is the biggest problem it's solved. AI has solved for a long time. Robot lawnmower's probably been one step too far. But the way it's going to change, I think, immediately, and I think Ben touched on this, the personal productivity piece is absolutely 100% there now. I've got a reasonably big team, nothing compared to Kari's, and ChatGPT would be on their computers every day. And what are they doing with it? I have no idea. Some people are creating documents, I'm sure. I know some people are writing emails. I'm wondering how much I should pay them to tell the robot to write emails. I walked past someone yesterday who was translating some data and putting a summary around it in English, but translating it into Chinese for our headquarters. We're owned by a Chinese company. And ChatGPT opened on the desktop. What are you doing? It's the best translator there is. She's bilingual, so she can definitely tell. And voila, we started a big project recently, and you normally get business analysts in and do a whole bunch of user stories and technical requirements and all that sort of stuff. I spent about 30 minutes on ChatGPT asking it to write user stories based on it being an expert in that particular type of software. I gave that to the people who will end up using the software that we deploy when we deploy it, and they said, nailed it right in the head. So if you're a business analyst, watch out. In the past, that would have been several workshops, several weeks. We're not talking a big deployment, but enough to have kept a BA busy for a few full days. We did it, and I did it, and I'm a nonc when it comes to that sort of stuff. I'm a bit more blue sky than in the detail. So for me, the letter from Bill Gates was interesting. It was very euphoric. We're going to solve the world's problems. That's awesome. We're also going to put a lot of people out of work. That's not so awesome. We are going to see as much dark activity as the upside, I think, and we need to be prepared for that. With great power comes great responsibility. That's awesome, but there's always some people willing to be irresponsible with the tools that they have, and with OpenAI and ChatGPT, it's out there, right? So there's not much getting away from it, doing some bad things, and I think deep fake photos of Donald Trump might be the least of our concerns.
Yeah.
But the upside is pretty good, and I think in the initial phase we're going to see a massive increase in personal productivity. I've already seen it. Microsoft's rolling out Copilot, which I think will be transformational for office-based desktop users. And we're going to see it creeping into the plant. I've got some of my friendly colleagues from plant automation, so a big dairy plant on the west coast, and I can see it creeping in there, helping with analytics, helping look at trends and data and all that sort of thing. And it's going to do it in a way that we've probably never done before. But I've jumped through 3 cards. What does it mean for society? I decided to prepare for this by reading 1984, just to rehash what George thought back in the 1950s. Probably not the right thing to do. I then followed it up with a great book called Rage Inside the Machine. It's worth a read, but again, it's pretty dark sort of vision. I think we need to be careful. So in terms of feeling unsettled, I think we need to be careful. I'm not against the idea of the pause for 6 months. I just think it's completely unrealistic. The bullet train has left the station and it's not coming back, so if you're not on, you're not on. But we need to be careful about displaced workers. What do we have in place in terms of upskilling and reskilling people? How do we ensure against unemployment? There's going to be a lot of change happen in the next 10, 20 years, if not the next 1 or 2 years, that we need to be very careful that we don't trip ourselves over. In the workplace, I think my biggest fear is we lose critical thinking. So we're very determined to see ChatGPT and generative AI solve problems, but remembering that it's based on probabilistic heuristics requiring data to already be there, I worry that innovation disappears. A lot of businesses succeed because when everyone's turning left, they turn right. And if you're basing your decisions on a lot of data from a heuristic model, generative AI, then everyone's going to turn right, and then it's just a race. So it's not yet at that point where it can critically think and create and innovate in the world where there's nothing there yet. So I hope it can help with global warming. I hope it can help with socio-economic issues that we have. I hope, but I also have a lot of fear that we as human beings can't achieve that. Yeah. There you go. That's me.
Great.
Well, we're in the business of helping students become more critical thinkers. And it's interesting, this comment of yours around the critical thinking, because I read Azim Khar's Exponential View the other day, and he said he uses ChatGPT to become more critical. And every time he writes a piece, he says, okay, well, rewrite this from a libertarian viewpoint, from a more democratic viewpoint. Are there any gaps in my thinking that I'm not picking up? But it's about understanding how to use it, and I think that's the big gap.
Yeah, I think if there's anyone looking for a job post-study, becoming a GPT prompt creator, you got 100%. You got a lot of people, and not being ageist here, but a lot of older people that won't use ChatGPT because how do I get the right information? And there's become a real art form in terms of creating prompts.
Yep.
We've got two guys down here that look like they know what they're talking about. Absolutely, there's going to be a role there for people to use it for others, which I think is kind of cool.
But then you just say sort of GPT-5, give me 50 prompts for GPT-4.
Yes. Did you just resolve my business problem there?
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. So let's go over into the questions. And I think, Gareth, seeing as you were last, you can go first in answering this. So we have some AI experts in the field from UC. Neely was sitting here. I saw her earlier. And we spoke about this earlier, and she said, AI has been around for decades, and we've just been, people are only waking up to it now. But it seems like this new wave of generative AI has truly brought this technology to the fore. What has changed in the space, and what hasn't? And then how can senior management ensure that their organizations are keeping up with the rapid pace of technological change?
That's a great question, and I think in our workplace, or in my workplace, you can see it. You can see the change. So if I went back 12, 18 months and I said, right guys, let's think about AI, I'd have my guys, the technology team, talking about RPA, process automation, plant automation. No one else would be really listening. There wouldn't be a lot of happenings outside of the team. But now I walk through the office and every third computer's got ChatGPT running. So yeah, it's been around for a long time. You kind of needed to know what you were doing to get the results you wanted. But now you can just ask it questions, and so the general populace has access to all that information. And I think AI over the last decade has involved creating models and bringing in big data to then run the model and give you the answers. You had to know about data structure and all of that sort of stuff. ChatGPT and generative AI is going to give you access to far more data than you've ever seen in your life. And you're not going to have to number crunch, you're not going to have to create structured data tables and build SQL databases and data warehouses and data lakes and all that sort of stuff. It's just there. I think the Microsoft Copilot thing, will help businesses like ours take all the data that we've got, all this, years and years and years of documentation and data, and actually be able to go through it and pull answers quickly from things that people haven't looked at for a decade because it's sitting in a document about a customer from, the 2000s. Man, I sounded old then. Yeah.
Thank you. Kari.
So when sort of some of the hype started to come out around chat, a bunch of my team said, right, we want to do some work on it. We want to go do some experimentation. And so straight away it was like, yeah, go and play. Go and have a go. Go and work out what it means for you and what it means for us. I then wondered whether or not we needed to prepare a paper, but there wasn't that much excitement or support or sponsorship to actually create that paper out of the analytics team. So thank goodness that our enterprise architecture team have actually produced that paper this week. Okay? And it was, thank you, because actually that's, when we talk about what does senior managers or what do our executives need to know, that paper was written in such a way by our EA team that it was very consumable and explained in plain English what this technology was and some of the retail use cases that it could potentially be applied to, which I think gives people confidence that we are, we're looking at this and we're leading and we're on the front foot. I think what's other things that we do, because I think it's helpful, I think, to just share like some of the real practical things that we do to help our exec and senior leaders get across this technology. So we're lucky to be working with Harvard on a Data for All program. That's been running for quite some time. And so our executive and senior leaders around the organization actually partake in a 6 to 8 week program where they start learning about different types of advanced analytics. And so they learn by doing, not just by sitting in lectures, but they actually have a go and they actually do simulations around retail. And so that's a way of getting our exec across the technology by doing it. And I actually sit with my MD every 6 weeks, and we did that this morning, talking, and I'll pick a topic. And I'll bring one of the team in, and we'll deep dive into that particular topic. Again, something that he might be reading about in MIT or reading about in the HBR, and just sort of making that so he feels super comfortable about what this technology means, and he can start to think about how can we apply that technology to different problems that's keeping him up at night. I think your point, Gareth, this is an augmentation. This is a human augmentation tool, and it always has been. When I ran a data science team at Air New Zealand, my data scientists I've been really excited about products like Data Robot for a very long time. Data Robot, H2O AI, Hyper Anna, these kind of really early products. And I said, look, let's get excited about Data Robot, productivity tool for ML. Like, let's get our models into production in days and weeks, not months and years. Wow, did you see their faces drop? I was like, I just want to program. I just want to type code and Python. And it was really frustrating. But what that's meant for me as a leader is I now recruit different type of data scientist. A data scientist that's outcomes focused and business focused, that wants to sit with the business and solve problems, okay, not one that just wants to sit there and learn and code. And I think this is an augmentation tool, it's a productivity tool, and if you've got to get on board, or, resistance is futile, I think.
Ben, I wonder, before we go into your answer to that, just to make sure that everybody in the audience is kind of up to date, we've mentioned the word ChatGPT a few times now, and I know many of you have used this, but maybe if you can just, in a minute.
Technical explanation, this is right, yeah. So it's a generative pre-trained transformer. So any AI academics in the room? Yeah, so the basic principle is that you take all of the digital content of all humanity that's ever been rendered into bytes, and you massage it into structured and unstructured piles, and then you ingest it into a massive pipeline of neural networks and machine learning tools, and they basically process it and build a model that is then able to and it's sometimes called a stochastic parrot, that is able to take all of that human knowledge in all languages that it's been ingested, and then, as Gareth was saying earlier, predict the next word. And so you ask it a question, and then it responds as if it's sort of writing something that it would expect to find in that massive model. I think it's about 175 billion parameters, I think, in GPT-4. Just pulling that number out of my head. So that's how it works. And then there's degree. That's sort of the unsupervised, what we call unsupervised learning, is that you literally just ingest the model and then take the raw format. And so that's something that I was seeing a video today. Someone on the red team at OpenAI talking about using that raw model and saying, well, how do I kill the most people in the quickest time, right? And it just spat out the answer, because that's basically what it's been trained on. So there's then a degree of refinement called supervised learning, which refines that down, and then there's what's also called reinforcement learning from human feedback, which basically narrows it down, and that's what they're using to create what we call guardrails to basically to start to apply AI safety concerns to these models, because as with any technology, it can be used for what we would consider to be good outcomes as well as bad outcomes. And so a lot of the concern right now is if you did put this raw model out there and open source that up, then what would people use it for? Does that answer a bit of a question?
Yeah, it's the human equivalent of predicting the next word in the following sentence, and you guys can fill in the word. The cow jumped over the moon. That's right. So
someone said something other than moon.
Yes. What did you guys say?
And that's it, because there's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's lots of different variations on that, and it models the probability of each of those.
That's right. So it just predicts that next word, and then as you interact with it, it gets bigger, better and better. And also that's why we keep saying it's all around that prompting, giving enough information so that it knows. But the problem with that is that it doesn't have context, right? So it doesn't have the context of whether, if you ask it to, what is the best holiday to have in Christchurch, whether you're actually asking it for a real holiday, or is it a make-believe holiday that you would want to have in 2050. So it's around those guardrails. And some of these guardrails, for example, in the beginning, ChatGPT could, if you asked it to do something and say, write me a speech, and it wrote you a little speech for a very specific context, and then you could say, write it now in Donald Trump's voice. And you could do that in the past. You can't do that anymore. It says, I can't be another person, or something like that. And that's one of those guardrails. Alrighty, sorry, back to the question. What has changed and what hasn't?
I think it's important to point out that the guardrails are quite wide. So one of the biggest problems with ChatGPT at this point in time is the ability for it to be very confidently wrong. And my fear in the education space is that we start teaching kids with these tools, and they all learn to be confidently wrong on the same topic, and then wrong soon becomes right, and all of a sudden fake news is real news, and we've got real issues.
So the confidently wrong is called a hallucination, right? An AI hallucination. And the problem is that it spirals, right? As soon as it's predicted the wrong next word, it just keeps on predicting the wrong and the wrong next word. And examples of this is where somebody has asked ChatGPT to explain how churros could be used in surgery. And then it confidently explains how a churro is soft enough to go into the areas that you need it to go into, plus the flavor and the smell is very relaxing for the patient. That's an AI hallucination, but it's one that Google has said is the biggest issue with AI at the moment, and one that Bill Gates has said is going to be solved within the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I think there's a degree of confidence that, as with, for those of us who've been in software for years, you have bugs, and you identify bugs, you work out what's causing them, and then you resolve them, and then suddenly they're just not there anymore. I don't see why, that particular phenomenon can't be, just treated in that way.
Yeah.
I think that the broader, the broader question of how do you apply, that human feedback to, develop the safety guardrails. I think we probably haven't got governance structures around that question at a global level.
Right, back to your question. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sorry. AI in business. Yeah. So I just echo Gareth's and Kara's points about just having innovation and just really intentionally innovating and exploring and being curious in your business. And I think as a country, it's not something that we do. And we have this number 8 wire, innovation myth. But in reality, if you go into many businesses in Aotearoa and say, well, where's your innovation portfolio? Who's on your executive team? That's basically being measured on innovation outcomes. And then in terms of taking academic innovation, academic research development through to a sort of globally scalable commercialization and providing value back to the rest of the world. There are bright spots, but it's systematically not something that New Zealand does particularly well. So in terms of bringing these new technologies into your business, I really enjoy working with companies that are intentional about it and that are confident not about just applying stuff just for what's right in front of us for the next year's business plan, but also looking out, sometimes in 3 horizons, model horizon 2, horizon 3, and really explore how is generative AI going to completely change the industry that we're operating in, and what new industries are going to come along that are adjacent to the ones we're in right now, and literally just allocating 5%, 10% of your innovation budget and into that space.
Can I build a little? I want to give a really practical example of innovation. I said, the team is experimenting, but we've got a goal that we have as part of the A&I team at Woolworths, and that's around making it easy for the team to work within at Woolworths. We want to reduce toil, we want to reduce drudgery, we want to make it, we want to improve the employee experience, what it feels like to work in the team. And so I've looked at some of the challenges that the team's faced with, and we're a really thirsty data organisation. Like, you will get pings from all sorts of different parts of the organisation at all times of the day asking for numbers, okay? And so that's, you can imagine the cognitive switching and the context switching and the pressure that puts on fairly, in some instances, fairly junior people in the grand scheme of things. And so actually we're using and experimenting, or one of the sort of proof of concepts that we're looking at is actually how do we use this type of technology to be able to, that our exec or a leader in our organisation could send a text message that could go to a Slack channel that could then respond to a question instead of a person needing to do that from an analytics perspective. So solving a very specific problem that we have in our business that takes us away from some of the more strategic work that we want to be focusing on. And that's a proof. We don't know if we can do it yet, by the way. We don't know. But we're going to experiment. Got some bright people alongside Google to see what we can do and how close can we get in a short period of time. So innovation, very time box, lean analytics style, smallest amount of effort, smallest amount of time with the smallest amount of data. If we can prove or disprove the hypothesis.
Can I add the last piece?
Yeah.
Thanks. I think, so I'm a business improvement specialist, and business improvement's been around for decades and decades and decades. We talk lean, we talk agile these days, we're all, buzzwords, and actually it hasn't changed in like 80 years. William Deming, the godfather, my favourite person in history, the godfather of process improvement, always said the problems to be solved will be in the front line. You know, the CEO has to get on the shop floor to understand where the problems are that are going to be solved. And so your question, which I didn't answer, was what do senior managers do? Senior managers need to get down on that shop floor, get on that plant floor, get out on the retail floor, and find out where the problems are that this generative AI can help with, and allow your frontline staff to embrace the tools. Give them access to tools that they can then go and find the problem and the solution. Because what's happening at the moment, or what's up until now, is that you go and find the problem, you come away, you get a consultant in, you do some BA work, you run up a scope, you go through an approval process, and 6 months later you get a solution that's only killing half the problem, and you start again. These guys will use ChatGPT and other tools to solve the problem on the front line without you having to intervene. That's the thing that excites me about this whole process.
Just to be a bit provocative, there's a contrarian meme out there at the moment that the CEO is one of the first roles that's going to be replaced.
Don't tell them. You don't tell them that, Ben.
And if you do look at the skills of managers, which has generally been to manage people, are we actually in a transition period now? We're actually managing machines and artificial intelligence is probably a skill set that's more valuable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ben, you asked Gareth a really interesting question earlier this week when we were having our chat, just around what Westland Milk Products have done in this kind of broader AI space and automation space that's been so amazing, and what kind of started that transformation for you all?
Going back a few years, we had quite a big problem in one team, and that was when I first started at Westland. That was my first job. That was essentially why I went to Westland. They asked for help, and I said, yeah, I'll come and help. And Kari explained the project without commercial boundaries being breached. But essentially, it was incredibly successful, into the millions of dollars type successful. And at the time, we had some executive leave and some new executive come along, new CEO, Richard, who's our CEO currently. And everyone in the exec understood from that one project all of a sudden what artificial intelligence, machine learning, optimization can do. And we also have some real key geeks who can really show how these things can cook. So our business intelligence manager, data analytics and all of that, she's a statistician, but she's a savant statistician. So she can do the data stuff, but man, she can work out how to show people what they need to know to run our business. And as an example, we use Power BI, which is a Power Platform Microsoft tool, but what she's done with it means that now when we have an exec meeting every week, it is front and centre. The data's in real time, the analytics is in real time, the decision making is often now done in real time, on a Monday afternoon, Westland execs making calls about what we're going to do and where we're going to go. And so that's helped unleash some other tools. RPA, we're massive with RPA. So we've got robots doing a whole bunch of stuff, software robots, and physical robots on the plant. And so that with process workflow automation, so kind of what I call now old school AI, has solved a lot of issues. We've automated a lot of parts of the business, and we ourselves can already see where workforce displacement could easily happen. It's a matter of fact, and we need to deal with it now.
Yeah. It was interesting because your burning platform that you spoke about on Monday was how do we get our current workforce to be more productive?
Oh, 100%, yeah. We weren't in a good state, and we needed to be in a better state. And now we're in a great state, so yeah.
Awesome. So for the sake of time, we're going to have to either jump to... okay. Let's roll this dice.
Told you we could talk.
Which concerns do you have about AI in 2 minutes? Because I am 100% sure that there'll be some questions around that. Go, you go first.
Goodness, I've just got such a long list
of
fears and concerns. I think Gareth, you touched on it a little bit earlier. I worry about laziness.
Don't worry about laziness. Smart lazy is good.
Well, I'm worried about the other just type of lazy, and I'm worried about our kids at school. We're talking about reskilling. I'm worried about de-skilling. And what does this mean for kids when they go to school, they don't need to write an essay, or they can just chuck it into chat. They don't even bother editing it, they just hand it in. There's no rinse and repeat, there's no challenge, there's no critical thinking. The neural pathways don't...
Why are they being tested on that at all?
Well, it's possible, right?
Good question.
It's possible. But I think that what I worry is about the de-skilling and the fact that we're not going to be picking and choosing explicitly the skills that we want to de-skill in, and we could just I suppose fall into an area that suddenly we've lost a bunch of skills that actually we really deeply need in the future. We just never bothered learning them in the first place.
Can I disagree?
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be a change of skill and role type. If you think about, what's the name of the guy that puts the shoes on the horse? Farrier? The job went away because there was new technology. Doesn't mean that person is no longer required. They probably had to reskill into something. I just think that the quantum of change and the quantum of new roles is going to be vast. And if kids are now learning maths, English, physics, science, great. But there's probably some subject matter that they need to add to the curriculum. And when I talked to my son's school a few weeks ago about the primary industry, and I mentioned ChatGPT, and I looked at all the teachers and said, "You guys know what ChatGPT is?" And no. I'm like, well, because my son's definitely going to be putting essays in now from ChatGPT, 100%. So if teachers don't know that it's coming, that's scary, and the subject matter has to change. But you're right. I think the quantum is the thing that's going to be the most painful piece.
Just briefly, probably three areas that concern me the most. So one I touched on earlier, which is just AI-generated content, and just the tsunami of that is just is not even started yet, and the ability for that to be uniquely targeted at every individual on the planet, so that everybody's basically just getting their own information feed, and there's literally no common narratives across, or people get forced into groups, contra groups, and fed one opinion, and these people over here are othered. So I think I don't really have a solution to that. I think there's ways of needing to basically digitally authenticate the content that we're coming from. At the moment, we just look for a BBC logo, but that's going to or a RNZ logo. That's going to be that's a really major global societal problem that doesn't have a solution right now. From a New Zealand perspective, my biggest concern is the concentration of power among these giant technology companies. You listen to that Sam Altman interview, the thing that came through is he's basically saying there's literally a few thousand people working on AGI, working at the bleeding edge of AI in the entire planet, and there are sometimes rooms where major AI safety, AI governance decisions are made, and you can count them on the fingers of one hand, the number of people in that room making decisions for the whole planet.
The thing that scared me about that, Ben, was the idea that the decisions they're making are sort of 2 years ahead of now.
Yes.
What we're seeing and can critique and question, wonder whether we should do it.
I mean, arguably, the GPT-4 is amazing at writing code. I wrote my first code in years on last week, and it was like, it was great. I wrote it. And GPT-4 was pretty much finished 7 months ago. And OpenAI have been sitting on this and letting it drip out through various channels for 7 months. It's been writing GPT-5 all this time, and so we will probably see GPT-5. It's awful branding, by the way, but within the next year, as I say, there's just this compounding acceleration. Yeah. So I worry from Aotearoa's perspective that we are just a technology taker, that we have no real input other than just to keep feeding this model with, with our queries and our prompts and our outputs, and that ultimately, the governance of this lies in a small minority of people in the US and China globally. And the third problem is artificial general intelligence and what we call strong AI, which, so if you've read a book from about nearly 10 years ago by Nick Bostrom, Superintelligence, Path, Dangerous Strategies, he goes into, it's very Oxford academic type of writing, but philosophy, but all the major dangers of a super intelligent AI that is more agency in the universe than all of humanity. So, on the other hand, I think in a few years' time, literally even 1 or 2 years' time, you could possibly go to GPT-7, GPT-90, and say, and hook it up to a molecular printer and say, solve climate change. And 2 days later, carbon dioxide will we still be here? I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about this stuff for 30, 40 years, and finally I can say that on stage, and people still laugh.
Kari. Was that your third one then? No, that was your second one.
No, that was my third. Yeah.
And I've done my concerns, but if anyone else is, if you're interested in reading more about concerns and fears around AI, I recently was reading Kate Crawford, Atlas of AI. I think that's what it is, and so she's been researching in this space for about 5 to 7 years. And so, she highlights some of the things that she's concerning, and she talks a lot about the concentration of power and the body corpus and the fragile foundations on which these large language models are actually being based.
Right. We're going to go into questions in 1 minute. I know you guys.
I have concerns.
Yes, sorry. Gareth?
I've covered most of them off. Online radicalisation, throw that out there. Controversial, but it's been pretty bad so far. It's only going to get worse with AI. Workforce displacement, I think, is a key thing we've got to start talking about at every level within society. Universal basic income, unemployment insurance, retraining, upskilling. How do we deal with a large population of people that don't work? Yeah. What are they doing?
On the radio this morning, one of the union leaders basically was talking about a just transition process from to start dealing with some of the with the jobs displacement. Yeah.
And yet France are up in arms about increasing. Why are they increasing? There's not going to be enough people working anyway. That's me.
Wow, okay. On that great note, we're going to have to then end with something positive before we go into questions. We just have to. So, in one sentence, if you're one of the business leaders sitting in today's audience, doesn't matter where you are, you might not have invested in AI at all, or you might be far along in your journey. What is the next step?
This is you, Ben. It has to be you.
So I think do some imagining. So first of all, get hands-on. So if you haven't used it, spend half a day sitting down, use ChatGPT, then use some search engines to go navigate with some of the tools. So use Midjourney, use DALL-E, sign up for the tools, and then be curious. Ask it a question that's really out there and see how it responds, and use that just to think imaginatively about what is this. Instead of just doing my business the same way I've always done it and maybe making it more efficient the same way we're doing it. So I mean, the opportunities for efficiency have been there forever. They're just being accelerated. But think creatively and just think how is this going to completely change somebody's experience of my business? I just think about government. Can you imagine if interacting with government was like ChatGPT? So just, what's my tax bill? Just pay it, all of those types of interfaces you could apply to any business that's sitting in the room.
Can I just? I'll just want to add. I think technology team. Anyone who's works in technology, we all have a little bit of this, I suppose, challenge around finding a problem that this solution can solve. And so we go hunting for a problem that ChatGPT can solve. And I'm just not sure if that's really the right approach. I think some of the old stuff still does apply. Yes, absolutely experiment, use it to spark and use it to generate. But actually keep looking at, what game are you in here? Like at a strategic level for the organization, what game are you in? Are you in the business model disruption game? Do you want to use AI to fundamentally change, how you're operating as a business? Are you in the operational transformation game, which is probably where Woolies are? Basically radically transforming how we operate end to end across the business. Or are you in the sort of the influencing the customer behavior, like an insurance company or car insurance or health insurance for positive effect? I think at a strategic level, you've got to kind of think, what game are you in? What role do you want AI to play? Come with some problems, come with some use cases, and build out some of your, and then experiment off the top of that. That doesn't mean you can't also do the rapid, and I think I said you've got to do all of it. You've got to do all of it right now, and that's the scary bit for people. You've got to get your data ready. You've got to get an AI ethics committee in place. You've got to get your exec education in place. You've got to get basic experimentation in place. You've got to get, you've got to get your frontline teams experimenting. It's not one thing, it's all of these things, and that'll be scary for organisations. But just take the next step forward. Just take the next step.
Well, we can sort their exec education out for them, Kari. The rest they can focus on themselves. It's fine.
For me, it's back to what I said earlier. Give the tools to your front line. That's where the problems will be that can be easily solved. And check in with your eyes wide open to see what they do and how they do it. I say this every week, if not twice a week, to someone at work. If everyone in our business could find 15 minutes at Westland, which is 650, 700 employees, depending on which day of the week you're on, that's an extra 22 people we'd have on staff without having to spend any more money. 15 minutes? Well, ChatGPT just saved me days. So if I give it to the right people and they solve that problem and they find an hour, 4 times that, 80 people, 100 people, a business like ours could do a lot with an extra 100 people. And so growth doesn't necessarily mean throwing more labour and more infrastructure and more costs at your bottom line. It just means we're being way more productive, way more efficient. And we're in the game of making profit, so it's good for profitability.
Thank you. Right, at long last, finally, Tim gets to run around with a microphone, and we definitely have our gentleman in the hoodie going first, because his hand was up way before anybody else's hand.
So I was really interested in the conversation about things breaking, and I was worried about the probability of there being some kind of systemic bug where I had recently someone was using ChatGPT to build select queries, and he's quite worried about when it does an update query, and then when lots of people start doing this all at the same time, whether there's going to be some kind of convergent mistake. Not a super intelligence with ill will, but just a big mistake. So I was wondering what protections you might think we might have against that.
Sorry, say the last piece again.
What protections might we have about stopping a convergent big mistake, big bug from happening by just accident?
I have no answer. That sounds scary.
So in a business context or in a just like...
In a protecting society context. So when we have a bug in one system affecting another system and it creates an avalanche of bugs that all interact with each other in ways that we can't possibly see in advance.
I'm a software guy, you just fix the bugs.
Thank you.
That's a bit flippant, but this is a productivity tool that will, if the scale of the problem is AI generated, the scale of the solution is AI generated as well.
Yeah, my question is similar but less accidental. Do you think that the increasing pressure of AI could could make the relativist society less relativist? For example, New Zealand, my impression is that it's a very relativist society because people want to show inclusiveness to all the people from different culture. So all the people's views are valued. Some people even advocate that we should let even the most marginalized voice get voiced out. I challenge that by saying that, can you let the Christchurch shooters' view also voice aloud? So I think there's a limit to that. But New Zealand society is very relativist because so many views kind of be respected. But the pressure of AI, whether you have access or not have access, can make a huge difference. For example, the TikTok. If there's a breach of the data security of the citizen identity in that stuff to other country, just like recently we lost how many 1,050,000 data of the driver license, that kind of stuff. So seems there's just a yes or no from the pressure of AI. Well, in our society, it's very relativist. And they even test the ChatGPT. If you ask questions in English, same question translated asked in Chinese, they will give totally different answer because that's another bubble.
I've been worried about this for a very long time. I've been worried about this ever since we've sort of gone into sort of personalised media, and when I did a stint in media and news, and and we were starting to sort of bring in thinking about personalisation of news feeds. And at the time, I've always wondered whether or not you should be able to give the user, the consumer, some kind of interaction tool or to turn up or dial down that echo chamber, show me something new, or how narrow do I want my news feed to be. I think I think AI and some of the immersive content that we could get to could absolutely, that worries me, that those echo chambers become louder and become more seductive and seductive and more addictive. It worries me tremendously, yes.
And I think, when you think about China's response to ChatGPT, Baidu had a demo and it was, by all accounts, pretty disappointing. And, the ability to ask, a chatbot in China, so, what would a better system of government be? Who would be a better president? Then, there's going to be a higher degree of surveillance and censorship in that system. That so ChatGPT has grown up with Silicon Valley ethics, and this is, but the guardrails that are being created are culturally relativist. Yes, absolutely. And so is there a globally? So when Facebook operates in Turkey or in India or in Botswana or the UK or America, what are there's different cultural norms in each of those societies and different jurisdictions as well. And there's whole teams that are basically censoring different types of things, and then training models to censor different degrees of nudity or different degree, and so on in each of those societies. So, ultimately, it's pretty impressive with the GPT-4, the translation capability between languages, and so, I think my hope would be is that these models would progress to absorbing cultural norms from lots of cultures and not just being monoculture. We have to, again, there's the governance question about who makes those decisions, is absolutely undecided globally at the moment.
And I also think your level of knowledge, which is a problem, because if you know to ask it for a more liberal answer, it would be more inclusive. If you ask it to exclude Fox News, it'll also give you a different kind of answer. But my 8-year-old wouldn't know to do that if he was ever to be exposed to that. So that kind of difference between kind of knowledge workers and people with information versus it might just get bigger. Yeah.
100%. I think your point about access to or not having access to, I think is a problem we need to contemplate as well. It's no different to access to the internet. It'd be great if it was free everywhere for everyone to use, but it's not. So that divide that's created by not having access to the information, the education, the services is only going to get worse. That's something that really scares me. And the cultural biases, the 1,000 people that have got influence and the billions of us that don't. The cultural biases in a business like mine would be a real problem. You know, we're culturally very diverse, you know, male, female, all walks of life, all parts of the world. If ChatGPT or generative AI was culturally biased, that would be a real problem.
Yeah. Right.
New Zealand is a small country, and you mentioned, Ben, that we take our time sometimes to get on the technology innovation bandwagon. I'm just wondering, as a nation, it's quite important that we are able to stay competitive in the global marketplace. How do you three see us? What's your perspective on how we should be collaborating across the nation or within industries to make sure that we can stay competitive?
Yeah, I have a book about this. Where to start? So my observation earlier on that we have ceded, I would argue we've ceded a degree of sovereignty almost unknowingly over the last 10 years by purchasing our commodity technology from mainly US technology companies, but also Chinese and you know, European and around the world. We've built an innovation layer, you know, that was largely seeded by Xero as a B2B SaaS business, and you know, there's a healthy software industry in the country, and then we export a lot of primary products as well, and that's what we've always done. And you know, just don't mention synthetic milk. It's not worth it. Not going to happen, right? So my sense is that we need to start building up our collective innovation muscles again, and learn by doing. And as part of that, also to collaborate with other economies and other you know, values aligned, I guess, organisations and companies worldwide. I think the challenge we have with the proprietary nature of much of the advanced technology that's being built at the moment to be commercialised in 2 years' time, which is very closed source. I feel that the only way that countries like Aotearoa are going to be able to compete is to collaborate on global open source projects that are, you know, that basically are able to provide a competitive alternative to a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon deployment. So yeah, so my sense is a national innovation portfolio that is really focused on not just commercializing innovation and, you know, making a buck. That's important. We need to provide stuff that's of value to the rest of the world. But also, you know, some of the missions here, you know, around climate change, around biodiversity restoration, around inequality, around, you know, housing, construction, infrastructure, all of these, you know, our natural, you know, if you look at our imports and exports, our natural inclination is like, we'll just buy it in. And I just feel that there's opportunities to take, you know, some of the smart minds here, augment them with some of this new technology, and then create solutions in collaboration with other countries around the world that are of value here and around the world as well. So.
Thank you.
Evening, everyone. My question is about the 120-odd temporary employees that live in Wellington and that are constantly working through a 3-year cycle to keep their job. This technology is obviously born out of the tech sector, but it will affect every industry in ways that we can't yet imagine. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the role that central government will play in setting up guardrails for something like this.
I would hope that they don't play too much role in the guardrails. I think social democracy, I think there needs to be, we need to talk about it amongst everybody. It's not I don't think the government would be capable of understanding where this is going to go and what needs to be done in order to keep some boundaries around it. I'd like to think they could, but I'm not convinced on a daily basis that they can do a whole lot. So I think it's important that we find people like Ben who have got a voice and talk amongst society. And I just don't think our government agencies, I don't think our government would be capable of putting boundaries around it fast enough. So yep, 5 years' time would be great. They'll understand how to keep the boundaries around ChatGPT 4, but we'll be on 15, you know, and it'll be a completely different world. And that's the thing that government, workplaces like mine, industries, the question about industries up here, it's going to change rapidly. It's literally a bullet train. If you're not on at the station, you're not on. And so we've got to start thinking about this now, which is why I'm not against the idea that Elon and his team have put in the letter about maybe we should stop for a moment and think about putting some boundaries around it. Elon's been talking about that for a decade. It's not a new thing for him, but I think it's changed. It's already, the horse is bolted. It's hard to put a saddle on a horse when it's already run around the track. So I don't know how we do it, but we need to have a good debate, which is something we also aren't very good at.
I'll just try and build a little bit. So recently the Office of the Privacy Commissioner went out to organisations across New Zealand to ask them to consult around biometrics. I don't know how many organisations in New Zealand responded to that call. We did, because we had one young man who was really passionate about data ethics in our team, and he wanted to drive it. And so alongside our customer trust and our AI ethics, he put together a response that we were comfortable with, that legally, that we felt comfortable with presenting to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner about biometric usage in New Zealand, considering that we impact so many households every day. So my point is, as organisations, we have a responsibility to help government make some decisions and to put things in front of them and to have an opinion and to have a perspective. How else are we going to help them do a better job? How else are we going to get them to serve New Zealand for now and into the future if we don't take some responsibility and to give them our perspectives? And we've each got to do that, because we'll have different perspectives. And hopefully collectively, through organisations like the AI Forum, who I know are putting policies to support government in this space, those are working groups that anyone can get on. We've got to free up time for our team members, our passionate team members, to get involved with those activities. And so collectively, we can create the trajectory, we can create the future that we want, and not stumble into something that we couldn't because we couldn't be bothered to talk about it. We couldn't be bothered to have an opinion. Have an opinion, have a perspective, and that's something that we hold very dearly within our team. We've got professional people. It's your professional responsibility to have an opinion. So talk about it.
I have some opinions. I think we have a
Quick one, Ben.
Quick one.
Quick one.
It's a really good question, and I have a reasonable amount of grey hair from engaging with the challenge. So I was the founding executive director of the AI Forum, and Kari worked with me a little bit there as well. We put forward a recommendation for a national AI strategy in 2018, I think it was, and then for one reason or another, that's been kicked. The can has been kicked down the road, and we suddenly find ourselves today in March 2023 with look at this AI thing, and I heard Madeline, who's the ED of the AI Forum, on the radio this morning, and apparently that's been kicked back to 2025. So, it's not the sort of thing that a politician has been able to stand and get elected on. It's like we need a strategy for AI. Maybe at the next election it will be a discussion. I think it needs to definitely raise up the agenda. I think we have a complete lack of foresight capability in Wellington, and that is just a disappointment for me. I look at other countries around the world. I look at Singapore, Estonia, and others, which are they have highly they live on they live in more militarized regions of the planet than we do. So maybe they need to, but they are very focused on what could the world look like. What are the scenarios the world could look like, and then how would we at a national level adapt to that? And technology is one of the key drivers, if not the driver, of that change that we're going to see in the near future. So my one recommendation would be to build foresight capability in Aotearoa's government. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. As a lecturer, I know that asking people to sit for 45 minutes is a stretch. If you really have to push it, you go to an hour, and here we are 1.5 hours later. So I want to, and I see the hand, sir, I'm so sorry. I just don't trust that Ben can answer anything in under 5 minutes.
ChatGPT, please summarise in 3 bullet points.
So I want to encourage those additional questions. There are a few hands still to just come and approach our panel. In the drinks and nibbles section of tonight, which we'll reward you with now. And just a very, very quick thank you to our panel. Thank you so much. I think we always knew it was going to be an interesting one, did not know it was going to be as controversial and thought-stimulating, but really thank you for that. I think you've provided fruitful ground for debate and for us to go away and also understand that next week there'll be something else in this space, and we'll need to have you back to come and talk to us about it. But thank you for sharing your learning from your organizations, and thank you for joining us tonight. So let me finish with our karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, tapo, tapo, kia watia, ai kua watia. Thank you, everyone. Join us outside.